Welcome to the 2024 Cloud Exchange keynote. My guest is Drew Myklegard, the Deputy Federal Chief Information Officer in the Office of Management and Budget. Drew, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely, Jason. Excited to be here.
Cloud Smart, you remember that document? It's 5 years old. I find it hard to believe it's been 5 years. But in case the folks aren't familiar with it, Drew, I'm going to just do a quick reminder. That strategy focused on three pillars: cloud adoption, to make cloud adoption successful, security, procurement, and workforce. At the time, OMB says these are elements that embody an interdisciplinary approach to IT modernization. It helps federal enterprises improve return on investment, enhance security, provide higher quality services. Again, I find it's kind of crazy, 5 years since Cloud Smart. So let's start right there, since we are here at the Cloud Exchange. How much smarter are agencies in buying and managing cloud services today than they were 5 years ago?
Well, that's a great question, Jason. I remember when, so I was at Department of Veterans Affairs when they came in, when OMB came in, and we do a lot of road shows here at OMB. It's like one of the best ways to get feedback from what we're doing. And we had a group of executives in an office or in our main conference room, and it was one of the best discussions that I'd had with OMB. And it was pivoting us as an agency. And you probably remember, like, Cloud First came out before that. So there's like a series of strategies as we were pivoting the federal government. I remember when I got to Department of Veterans Affairs in like 2013, and at that time, like we were very out of sync with some of the other agencies. I'd come from the military, and we used cloud a ton. Like we used it to drive mission success. At VA, like one of the little quick anecdotes we used, like the IG was fine with us using whatever we wanted as long as we could put the hard drives in an evidence bag. And so like that's really where a lot of agencies start. They need to it's not just about the technology. I mean, you have to have great technology, but then you've got to bring on your teams, and you've got to like procure it correctly. And then you've got to have the right teams internal to your IT department. And you've got to have the business lines bought in. And you really do need to bring along your executives and your IGs, because any of those, like without complete buy-in, like the best programs can fail. So a couple years later, I remember like we were much more advanced at VA. Like we knew how to procure it. Our internal teams we'd gotten great talent. We'd also grown some talent. We were getting much better product from our contracts and the investments that we were making, and we've seen that across the federal government. So not only are we like smarter in tech, but we're also smarter in all the things that are enabling that to be successful. And it does. It takes time. So even though it was 5 years ago, like they were making that tour in 2018, or like in that tour in that time 5 years ago it was like 18, 19. It takes a year or two for the acquisitions to come out. And then it takes a couple of years to have those conversations if you're forward leaning with like your GC. Like all of that stuff takes time in the federal government, but I see it very much as building the momentum and delivering many of the products that we're rolling out today, like direct file and like some very big successes this last year in IT are due to that work.
And I know with the initial Cloud First, it was all about getting stuff to the cloud. Cloud Smart said, hey, we need to take a more pragmatic approach. And now it feels like agencies are almost moving. Maybe you need a new strategy, Cloud Next, which is this idea of software as a service, because as you and I talked about several months ago with the FedRAMP memo, that when the draft came out, a lot of the changes in the FedRAMP memo, and we'll get to that in a little bit, is really pushing towards software as a service. Is that the trend you're seeing? Is this agencies now have gotten kind of like comfortable, and now they're ready to move to the next version? Again, I call it Cloud Next, but you call it whatever you want.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. At the same time, we were learning inside of the federal government how to use, primarily IaaS providers, those infrastructure as service providers. There were companies and teams building on top of those. They were doing a couple of things. One, they were those IaaS providers and PaaS providers that we were primarily using. Their tools get better with time. Like containerization or Parquet databases. There were better tools for us to use internally. So our applications were getting better. And you had, hundreds of thousands of companies out there that formed over the last probably 9 to 10 years since we wrote that FedRAMP policy that are very focused on software as a service. Some of them are very niche in what they do. And then some of them are much bigger and more broad. we have found that the agencies that are leaning in on leveraging those SaaS products are doing a couple of things. One, they're able to like fulfill a lot of security requirements. Since those SaaS products, they don't have a lot of the legacy challenges that our on-prem solutions have. Like you can adopt like them very rapidly through acquisitions, get them secured through most of the ones that are already FedRAMP. You're then just thinking about the controls that are pertinent and relevant to your office. And then lastly, like just that you don't, as you're a developer internally, we have to manage roadmaps. We have technical debt. We're fighting for dollars. We're doing a lot of different things to make a product successful that most people don't see. If you're able to offload a lot of those kind of efforts to an outside company, but still influence the roadmap, it's really the best of all worlds. So absolutely, like we are hoping and driving, and we see this at a number of agencies where they're ruthlessly commoditizing their old work processes and their systems, moving it to SaaS if it's not in their core DNA. But then the things that are very unique, like so I think of like Department of Veterans Affairs, My Healthy Vet, and the benefits. Like there's no SaaS company that's going to approach that need. And VA.gov, like they're bringing their best. The team, they used to have a problem with their people spread across multiple projects. They're able now to concentrate their best engineers, their best internal and their best contractors on building great products and not worrying about the rest of them. Just the last part, when we think about, just usage overall, so our main goal is like great IT across the federal government. And so the way to get there, like we just cannot build it. And there's no reason to try and build something that's already in the commercial sector. So when we go and talk to a business line who's trying to deliver on a policy, a mission, some other need, like you want to speed the time in which we can roll out programs of federal government and public benefits to those that need it the most.
Drew, you hit on a really interesting bit here that I think has changed over time with the agencies when we talk cloud first to cloud smart to wherever we are now, is this understanding that, hey, I can move a lot of the back office functions, HR, finance, procurement, and use cloud services, SaaS, or what have you, but really focus on my mission areas that really there is no commercial equivalent to, as you kind of gave that great example at VA. Is that the types of conversations that OMB is having with CIOs and other program and mission areas? Where do you get a sense that agencies, do they get that, or is that kind of that next level that they're getting toward, but they're not maybe all there yet?
So there's a spectrum across agencies. There's some 400 agencies. I would say that you are seeing more and more agencies adopt that as people come in from outside and are working. There's less of a gulf between like the applications that you run on your phone at home and small businesses where we have a lot of friends or even large businesses and the ones that the government's using. So absolutely. There's less of an appetite, or there's more of an appetite on the business line to say, I'm going to go back and look at my business process re-engineering. I'm going to examine like what I need to do to accomplish like 80% of the mission. And maybe we don't need that customized product, but I can get it faster. I can, like it can scale, uptime, and then just better like roadmap going forward. Maybe we'll get well above that 80% to something closer to like that fits our mission perfect. I will say that the conversations that we're also having in that area, the people that are really successful are attaching to something that comes out from either legislation or the federal government. And a lot of that legislation in our office derives from, and policy derives from executive orders around AI, digital experience, and cybersecurity with 14028, that executive order, and the focus on cybersecurity. That really opens up the door for a lot of agencies to go in and modernize their applications. And when they're having that serious conversation and putting money towards it, that enables them to really have a decision about like, hey, let's not just keep fixing, an older application. Let's really lean in based on zero trust principles and pillars and like executing what is the next generation system so that people are seeing the data they want, the data they need at the time they need, and no inappropriate like sharing of data or security in a much better way.
Drew, you highlighted a lot of the work that OMB and the White House has done over the last 18 months or so, AI, digital experience, cyber as an example. So I got to ask, any plans to update the cloud strategy? Do we have a a update to Cloud Smart coming or in the works, or how are you guys looking at that?
So we've contemplated that a number of times in our leadership team, but we really do feel like that the cloud strategy, both of those, well, the Cloud Smart especially, is aging well. Like there are a lot of areas where we need to come up to speed, like update older, like FedRAMP is 10 years old. It was directed for IaaS providers. We need to pivot to SaaS. We weren't dealing with I mean, AI has been around for 20 years, and now every conference I go to is all about AI. We need policy around that. We need to give them the guardrails. So OMB does a really good job in these areas of like, here are the guardrails, here's the top cover. But when it's just when you are building a custom app on the cloud today, like we've really put out the guardrails, we've put out the top cover. They're able to use like the best tools to fit their mission, do risk-based decision making. We haven't tied their hands. And so what we see is like the next innovation of our policies. A lot of times we'll put out a strategy. A lot of times we'll use M memos. A lot of times we'll use circulars. So we like to use all of them to achieve the need, but we're getting feedback from agencies of the things that are most helpful, the things that are barriers to them to succeeding. And those are the areas that we're absolutely focused on.
And in many ways, the policy, as you said, number one, it still matters. It's still, as you eloquently said, aged well. But also, we're at the point now, I think, in the government is cloud is passe, right? We don't talk about cloud, right? In the sense of like, we all got to move to the cloud. It's kind of accepted. So the how to do it and how to make those capabilities work is where the data policies come in and digital experience comes in, cyber, AI. Is that kind of where the government's at today, and why cloud still very important, matters a lot, but there's a comfort level?
Yeah, I mean, there's a comfort level. I think that we have removed a lot of the barriers. Like people are good at buying it now. The things that we are always, though, very attuned to are all of the developers. Are they using like the most modern tools, and are they very similar to the environments that you see in the commercial sector? Our goal is to have a developer come from a commercial company and have a very similar experience within the government. And that means like how long it takes them to commit their first line of code, or like how quickly they can spin up an environment, how quickly they can like scale. Like we're trying to seek parity, but also in industry, you don't hear a lot of people talking about, like, are you in the cloud or are you not? Like they're making decisions based on tooling, skills. So if you have like a team with a specific engineering experience on one of the major clouds, that's going to drive your direction. You want to bring in the best teams to build on the clouds. So we do think of it, and I think of it as an extremely powerful accelerator for everything we do. And we want to keep our eye and make sure that we are leading that. And there are challenges, like with the FedRAMP policy, we got a lot of feedback, like what things do we need to ATO? What things do, like what's low, moderate, high? How do we do inheritance, presumption of adequacy? Those kind of conversations are great. Like that shows to me success when people get the tools they need to build the best products, or they're able to buy them. And now we're just talking about how to do that faster, how to upskill that next level that'll take us, keep us moving towards parity with industry.
That's a great segue to the discussion around the impact of cloud on things like development. You talk to heavy development shops, Social Security Administration, USCIS and DHS, USPTO. Those are some of the leaders with using Agile, DevSecOps. But then you have others in the government who say, oh, yeah, we're using Agile. And then when you get into it, I've heard, and not that I have ever got into it, it's waterfall still. It's still delivering 6 months or 12-month increments. And still they have everything laid out in a big, document. What are you seeing, and how are you working with them to get them into that right environment, to get them towards those modern tools?
Yeah, well, I think there are a couple of things. One of them is success. So it's a little frustrating, but you never want to be the first mover in the federal government. Like I was at an event a little while ago, and it was industry. There were very few government people, and the person's like, we have to adopt this next technology, otherwise our competitors will. Unfortunately, that's not the case in the federal government. Like the incentives don't align that way. So what we look for are the individuals, and it's usually like one individual or a small team that builds something really cool and does it in a safe, secure way. So then when you get the executive buy-in, you get like a very good like return on investment that is very proportional to what you would expect in the commercial sector. And it's a best-in-class product. I remember during COVID, they built a chat bot quickly. I'm still at Department of Veterans Affairs, but you'd seen this a number of times. Like these chat bots started appearing, and there was a lot of open source stuff, and people were like, "This is like I don't know where like I don't know how long you've been planning this. This is so amazing." And so when you talk about like waterfall, you have to plan years out. Well, these were people that were pivoting rapidly within teams to give a feature or a small concept. Like those small things, like a chatbot that really, really works well, can shift like the mindset of executives who may not have faith in a program. And then once they start expecting that, expecting those type of quick returns from their investments and those high ROIs, that's going to shift other people to just to upskill. And then once we get some momentum and you get that momentum, you start pushing. So we see a lot of that really over in like DOD, because they'll have a mission driven need where they're like, we have to deliver this, whether it's managing, 1,000 sorties that are in the air. Think of all the logistics stuff that we're working with, like over like the software that we had to retool to support Ukraine, or like overseas stuff that we'd spent decades building in a different way because we were in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now we've changed our focus. So you'll find those individuals, and then those best practices do filter down, but it does take time because you usually have to write a new contract. You have to have the team that comes in to do it. Then you write the contract, you bring them up to speed, and they start delivering. I mean, I am always looking at making that flywheel go faster. And most people, like as we take down their barriers, that it's a mixture. You're walking with them together. You never want to shame them, but as you take steps forward, as one person takes a step forward, the other person feels comfortable. And I also think that it's leadership too, like executive buy-in, and our leadership team talks about this a lot. Like we're setting steps. Like we may not make all the progress we want, but what we hope is that when the next leadership team comes in, that they see the steps that we were taking, are able to push the, like have a pathway in the beginning and can go a little faster.
Does OMB or does the OFCIO's office measure that move to modern tools, modern deployment processes, whether again it's DevSecOps, Agile, you can name whatever you want to name it. Is there a way you all can measure that?
So I think it's twofold. We measure it with our outreach. So like this leadership team, I'm looking for the right term for it, but we're really like Voltron. So you've got Claire Martirana, our federal CIO, great digital experience, customer experience, extremely passionate about like the end user, and really drives to make sure that people have a digital option instead of walking into an office or a field office. And that's extremely valuable. You have Chris DeRusha, our federal CISO. Like not only was he here before, but he's been at agencies, as well as Claire. Like he's one of the thought leaders when it comes to cyber. And Eric Mill, who recently departed our office and went over to run FedRAMP, which I couldn't be happier for. Like he was the architect of Zero Trust. They spend, and then myself, we spend so much time out in the field. So there are metrics, but there is we have found no substitute for just meeting somebody like Cordell over at Transportation, Kurt over at VA, Eric Heisen over at DHS, Kelly Fletcher. Like they have good relationships with each other. Now there's a whole other side. So then we also have our desk officers behind them who are meeting with agencies, getting a feel for what's happening on the ground, asking those direct questions. And of course, like we want to run by metrics, like what you measure matters, and that's what pushes things forward. So there's a couple areas that we really focus on there. One is FISMA. So FISMA reporting is absolutely critical. We bring in a lot of data through that. It then is like digested by our teams, we make decision leadership level where we should be investing, where we should help be budgeting and making strategic investments at agencies. Then we also have, like, we're 6 months in on our DX memo. Once we get the memo out the door, as Claire likes to say, like the cement starts to harden. So the program starts to take form. So you're seeing like 6 months in on that. We look to be seeing like some very specific things around digital analytics program, a couple key areas that we see over at GSA programs that they're able to set a water level, or they're able to set a watermark on what good looks like. One of the areas that is easy to like, that is actually really baked and probably the most mature, is the idea of customer experience. So you saw at a number of agencies, especially in the high impact service providers, because they're such critical benefits to people, like how were the services, and I've seen this at almost every agency, like how was the service that you consumed? Like they want to know, they want that feedback, and that's really powerful. So what we're looking at, like we're looking at what we see in like these 4 areas. So you've got that direct feedback that we're hearing from agencies through Chris, Claire, myself, our desk officers, like that human component. You're seeing very objective metrics over time through FITARA, FSMA, like a lot of our scheduled reporting. And then you're really hearing back from customers, like the people that are the end users of your systems, through like the high impact service providers, through some very key objectives and in a digital experience. So we like spend a lot of time focused on that and that data collection and that outreach. And we really feel like it pays off when we go and work with our budget colleagues, or when we're speaking with the Hill.
I was going to try to hesitate bringing up the Hill, but since you brought it up, I know there's a lot of back and forth with FSMA metrics, FITARA metrics. What's those conversations like, and how are you looking at, okay, how can we continue to evolve them? I know FSMA is maybe a little bit easier, but I know Congress always wants more. FITARA metrics has been, we've seen the scorecard as an example evolve over time from Jerry Connolly and GAO. What's OMB's take on how to continue to evolve those metrics and working with the Hill?
So in my entire career, I've never had like a leader or a group above me that didn't want more data for the right reasons. Like we all want it. They're like, the more data, the better decisions I can make. And frankly, it is tough, like you're like, well, what, like how much data is the right amount? And then you're having that conversation. But the alternative conversation is just like based on whims, or based on like what somebody feels is the right solution. And so I think like, even though there's sometimes there's a friction in like, how do we figure out what are the best ways to move somebody, move an agency or a program from like a lower level of maturity to a higher level of maturity? Because that's what we're always trying to do in the federal government. We're trying to make it better, trying to make those services better. So there's a friction. Like one of the hardest things in tech is to guess what's going to be there 2-5 years out. Like if I was at all good at that, I would be in a far more lucrative position. But like the government is, challenging in that way. Like if we propose something and we have ongoing conversations with the Hill and the agencies, like what data are we collecting that's helping you? Like, and you're trying to keep that evergreen. And with the Hill, like we're like, these are the things that we're looking at. These are the problems we anticipate. And so it does take, I think it takes longer for everybody to come, like to come to the right numbers and the right solutions when you're thinking 2 to 3 years out. But I will say our Deputy Director Miller was before the Hill, and Congressman Conley asked him a very direct question about FedRAMP and the maturity of it. So we do, like we get inbound questions about our programs at a very detailed level, and we really encourage that. It is great to have somebody ask us clear questions when they want a result that we can then go and measure. Like we absolutely love that. And we're like, we were working on it yesterday, right after you asked the question, we started working on it to, ensure that like we have a pathway to solving that need. So yes, the federal government is a huge behemoth and lots of programs moving in a lot of ways. But I think, like the way that we're managing the $100+ billion budget is getting better and better, and there's better value for taxpayers, and public benefits are getting better every year.
I had to watch that hearing, and obviously there's a lot of focus on telework and some of the management side of it, but I also saw the really important discussion around these digital services and the changes that OMB has really been pursuing over the last couple of years, which is always nice when Congress actually talks about those things versus the shiny object of the day, which is, return to office and telework and the like, which is a great segue to OMB has been very busy putting out a ton of policy updates, digital services, AI, FedRAMP, accessibility. I'm sure there's several others. Let's circle back to the topic at hand of cloud and maybe just give me a broad base of the role cloud plays as you kind of continue to modernize federal services, to think about cloud, obviously security, accessibility, and the like.
Yeah, so there's a couple of areas, and this is one of the areas that I feel like we are extremely helpful within Office of Management budget. So, like we're in charge of helping manage, and then obviously we have our budget colleagues. So there are a couple of like very key areas. One is as we're making decisions around where we put, and we are in a constrained budget environment. This is a time when we need to be getting the most value out of our dollars in the programs. So there are very intense conversations of like, how much are we going to put into this program? Like first off, what should this program cost if they're launching a new one? Like how soon can we expect time to value? Like, is there a way that we can limit our costs without, like building a huge infrastructure and waiting for it to grow? So we see like cloud, when I'm describing that to you, and I'm usually using that on the business side, in my head, I'm just like, well, that's cloud. Like you build an app, that you inherit a lot of the security that's already there. Like I'm reducing those costs. If I have to go and build all that infrastructure myself, if I have to buy that infrastructure 3 to 5 years ahead of time, like and build like some sort of data center, and I have less tools, I have to, like my costs are going up. So our budget people, like, wow, while we don't see cloud, like we don't have the word cloud in a lot of like our presentations and stuff, you see the salient characteristics of it. And I will say, like the agencies that are moving to that, you're also seeing something that is really encouraging, and it's like less failures. So they're going to fail fast. They're going to like try and get that product market fit, but you're not going to see like these promises of like, well, I need 5 years and a huge amount of money, and then we'll see what we get. Like with cloud is great. Like, outside of government, you can grab a credit card and try and build something. Inside of government, it's not much harder. Like in most environments, DoD, you can spin up a workspace. It's certainly, like you don't use your own personal credit card, but it is very close to like you can build something, get some feedback. And so you move from like what we see is moving from like these PowerPoints and like our demos now are working code. They're working applications. And when people start value that leadership, like we're seeing it through, and you just can't do it like otherwise. There's no way to build an application, for $5 to $10 million other than, and that you'd hope like in year 3 to 5, maybe scale to 1 million or 3 million users. Like that, you can't do it any other way. Like it is the path forward, and it's a characteristics conversation, and not like you talked about, like a shiny object conversation.
One of the things you bring up when you talk about budget is this idea of, as agencies are saying, hey, we need to modernize, we need to change, we can't just say, hey, we need $100 million. Those decisions become harder. How often is OMB working with desk officers on the budget side and the management side and coming together to say to agency X, hey, we support what you are doing, but here's another way to do it that's faster, cheaper, and better. Move to the cloud, that 5 to 10 million app versus the $150 million app. How often do those conversations happen? And I'll even put you on the spot. Is there one that you can think of without calling out a specific agency? You can anonymize it, but did something happen in the last budget cycle that you'd point to that says, we had this, and here's how we hopefully get them the same result, but not at a much lower cost?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like we really see our value in OFCIO in helping those desk officers do that. They deal with such big numbers across. We focus all on tech, obviously. Like we think that is the most important thing. But when you've got hundreds of billions of dollars and trillions of dollars in a budget, small portion of that is going to be IT. Unfortunately, at our level, like it's going to be like to focus in on a out of a $6 trillion budget on a $5 to $10 million program, it does like there has to be a strong working relationship with your budget side. You can't do it with all of them, but what you can see, where you see the stars align, is like a individual that's trying to do something matched with executive support, and then like either talent. We like to like work across OMB. So like sometimes there's USDS individual, like a team is deployed, and me and her team like have a great sense for how to help them build and mature. And then you've got like a great budget officer, an RMO, a resource management officer, who's thinking about like this year and next year and like what are the hard trade-offs, because it's always a hard trade-off. There's no like asking for more. So it's like, okay, I can make this shift from here to there. And then you have us at OFCIO like enabling them through policy. And you know, like one of the like a couple of the great ones, like the direct file this year, I think they were shooting for 100,000. They went over 100,000 in direct file. Like that's amazing. And just like, you know, like a couple specifics, like they built on the same API that the industry uses. You know, like they're reusing internal they're using like APIs that are already there, internal infrastructure. You're able to go quickly because you're building on that's already in place. And then we can have like a thoughtful, nuanced conversation after that of what lies below that API. Like what systems are feeding into that? Which ones do we need to target? And so you don't see, you see more like targeted fixing of systems where like that system we really need to modernize. We really need to make sure that that's a higher availability. Like let's target that, because if that goes down, there's going to be these series of events, and we're able to target better than just saying, well, the system was down. You know, like that type of modernization and that program's really, really exciting to me. And anytime like somebody comes in and they're like, we're reusing, when they come in and they're most of the time they're able to say that they're driving down costs by reusing APIs, like in previous investments, and that makes us feel really good, because we're thinking like 3 to 5 years out, like how is the agency reusing their stuff better?
Drew, in the last 10 minutes or so we have together, I do want to hit upon a couple things, and I'm glad you brought up the idea of budget. One of the big challenges that OMB has over the last, you know, I'll say 20, 25 years that I've been doing this is this idea of O&M versus DME. And we're still, in a lot of ways, agencies are still stuck at that 70 to 80% range. And there's always this prioritization. How do we get more money into that DME? You know, maybe it's a matter of measurement is kind of the old, we need a new way to measure O&M versus DME. Maybe it's just we'll always be at the 70, 80% range, and that's fine. But do you see the reprioritization of that funding, of those efforts, to more of the development, modernization, enhancements versus the operation and maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, you're highlighting like an extremely challenging problem that we see in industry. I mean, we've been writing code. If you think of like the federal government, and I hate to say this, you know, Jason, like, you know, how long you and I, but you threw around like 20 years, and I'm thinking, yeah, and there's some treasury systems I know about that are like 45 years old, some FAA systems that are really old and we worked on one last year that connected to every airport across the US. So like when they wanted to modernize, it's not just like an FAA system. It's like like every airport needs to modernize at the same level. So we see it in government, because we have a lot of code that's been doing a lot of things for a long time. And priorities, you know, like we assume that that's great working code and we can go do other priorities, versus oftentimes probably the better thinking would be like, how do we go back and get the most, like how do we pay down our tech debt? How do we, you know, modernize that system? That unfortunately that doesn't, you know, like we accept or we assume that code doesn't need the investment that it does. I would say that we underestimate how much the cost of writing custom code is, and like maintaining that. So you also see an industry, and we see it in foreign countries as well. Claire Monterana and all of us welcomed digital experience people from all over the world this week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And, you know, like in closed sessions and when you're talking, everybody's facing that same challenge, and you can name it differently. You know, like you can say, and you need a way of naming it. You have to have a way of measuring it over time. Absolutely. But it is a very difficult struggle to like move off of a legacy database that's working really well, or a number of them that just don't have that many services like built on top of it, moving to, you know, like making that extensible in the cloud, or investing in like a software pipeline. So you make that investment for a couple of years, you upskill your people, build it in like a modern cloud environment, then you can ship a lot of apps through it. But you've got to have the time and space to do that. And we're under the same pressures that industry is in other countries. So I do think that's a challenge. I oftentimes worry when I hear people say like, this is going to be cheap, this is going to be easy, and this is a simple solution. There's a bumper sticker in our office, and I'll get close, maybe not perfect, but it says like, we're building the legacy systems of tomorrow. And so like, not only are we trying to modernize the past, but the way that we're building in cloud and modernizing today is going to be the problem of, like hopefully you and I are one day, enjoying like long bike rides in like the Potomac or Florida or somewhere. And this is somebody else's problem. And I want to set them up for as much as I can as success. And that is not saying that like, these are really easy, cheap systems. Let's just keep building them. I think it's more like when you talk about modernization, you've hit on it a lot. It's like build it the right way, have the right people, make those investments, and nurture it over time.
You brought up the bumper sticker. My favorite bumper sticker, I have to tell you this story, comes from the Clinton days of John Podesta. I think he had one that I've been told. I've never seen it. Wonk if you love policy. So maybe I'll get I'll get that one and yours now next to me, so I can have them on my car. I want to come back though to something you said that about we underestimate the cost of writing custom code and maintaining it. We struggle to get off legacy databases that are already working well. So what can OMB do to help that? Okay, we may never get the DME up to more than 20% or 25%. We may never get the O&M down below 70, but how do you continue to reprioritize the money? Like give me a sense of this is not a policy, this is a what change, because you can't, you could write all the policy you want, but this is a change in what that has to happen with agencies that OMB can help them with.
There are a number of areas. So one of the powers that we have at OMB, like our superpower, is the power to convene and bringing together people across industry. Like I talked about, like with Claire doing that with digital experience from around the world, we like bring people in and like unite on a singular goal. You're right. Like policy will give you the top cover, but without getting people in the room, building that momentum, like we're really, really good at setting, like taking down the roadblocks, enabling people to like move forward where they need to. And then the last one is like building that momentum. Like you have a lot of great leaders here in OMB that like it starts with our directors. Director Young is amazing. Like when she brings people together, whether, like in tons of her work has been highlighted around the budget and the relationship she's made. She's imbued that all the way down. Like Claire knows, and we all know that a lot of the way that we're going to keep moving the government forward is by bringing people into the room, having those conversations. But what is absolutely critical once we have those conversations is to measure and show progress. So we've got to get more talented people in the federal government. You're seeing that with like the AI efforts to hire. Eric Heisen over at DHS, he's bringing in 50 new AI people. Like that sets a precedent. Like when Eric does something like that, then he gets on the phone and he has conversations with other HR teams and development teams across the federal government, and it reduces the anxiety and the fear. And so then you can like hire and bring better people in. And I also just want, like OPM is doing some great things around like our descriptive, like the mechanisms in which people hire, like, and then following it up with training and policy. And then our procurement, like we actually all get together here at, in our weekly meetings. So one of the best things about being an OMB is like on the management side, especially, we have a bunch of different disciplines that we can bring together. So we have our performance team, we've got our management team, and we have our procurement team. And then we have us as OFCIO and USDS and Made in America. Like between all of us, like there isn't a program in the federal government we're not touching. So in like an ideal situation, like USDS or we see like USDS sees a problem, sees a challenge at the industry, at the like at a mission level within an agency, then like we make sure that the policy is in place that they can like move rapidly. We have our procurement teams who are making sure that the FAR is supporting that and working with GSA, another partner of ours, like they're putting out the correct vehicles for people to access. And then you've got like our performance team and management team ensuring that the CFOs understand the cost, the long-term expectations, and then measuring performance long-term of like how we're doing in those. So like the cross efforts that we can do with OMB and convening is very powerful.
Drew, when you said the most important or the strongest lever you have, I thought you were going to tell me it was the Klinger-Cohen letter that you could sign off and force agencies to work better together. But convenient maybe is a nicer way to do it than having to sign a letter like that. In the last few minutes we have together, I definitely want to talk about the Technology Modernization Fund. We
Yep.
know the impact it's had. I would, of course, argue the IT working capital funds is really the key piece to the Modernizing Government Technology Act, but everyone loves to focus on TMF. Congress has not been as happy with the TMF as we had hoped. There was a $100 million rescission in the 2024 bill, and then there was a $10 million rescission in USDS. Talk a little bit about how those two, impact are going to impact the IT modernization efforts, and what's OMB doing this year to work with Congress to kind of continue to explain to them. You guys have gotten much more aggressive in the last 12 to 15 months, which I appreciate seeing. But obviously, Congress is still a little tepid on why they should continue to give you more money. First of all, I'll start with that 100 million rescission. That's a big impact.
Well, like the budgets are hard, and like we're coming out of a time when we invested a lot into the government, and like there were a lot of rescissions across it. We don't take any of them personally. Like our office got almost like we went from 13 our request and we got 8 million, and they're that I don't take it personally that they don't think I'm doing a good job. They have to hit, like they have a requirement to balance both the spending and the value they're getting, and they have to make hard choices on the Hill all the time. So like I don't see any of the rescissions, and I don't see any of the because they're spread across the board. Like you could have kept going down, like on the number of rescissions. Like they weren't targeting one project. They were like, how do we make this work for the American people? So like the TMF, I spent a lot of time on that board. The projects that are coming through are great. Like we made some key investments, some big dollar investments into cyber. We made some large investments into login.gov and identity. And as we're pivoting towards customer experience and AI, like we've put in a $75 million request for next year for TMF. We think that's right in line with what we can do and effectively spend it. I love the working capital funds. To me, it's never a or. Like I think that it's all three. It's your normal budget, it's your working capital funds at the agencies that are going to help you like make sure that you can make investments that aren't aligned to projects. And then TMF is like a great way to like test some things or make a future investment at a discount. So you got like a 50% repayment rate within TMF. Like agencies bring in, like they share in the costs with us of it. And then we can accelerate that just because of our, like it's very hard with like multi-year budget cycles and when the funds are coming. So when we see an area that we really want to push to, that's a obvious priority for the country, for the Hill, for the White House, when they all line around something like AI, we're able to move into that out of a pot of money that, like frankly, outside of the federal government, like those numbers are huge. Like the amount of money that we're putting into, like the working capital funds and TMF, $75 million is a great amount of money to make huge changes when done properly. And like that can have huge impact on projects. So overall, like I agree with you. Like, it's hard not to take it personal, and I'll just say like USDS does great work. We do great work, but we also, like we're in an environment and companies go through this all the time. They're out capturing revenue. They're like growing. Other times they're cost cutting, and they're doing the right thing to make the business stronger.
So one last bit on this, and then we can wrap up our conversation because I know you've been very generous with your time. With the rescission, that obviously will impact how much money you have to put out the door in 2024 and beyond. Is it how would you characterize that impact? Is it, oh, we're going to have 5 less projects or 20 less projects? Or can you give me any sort of how you all are saying, okay, we're going to do a lot of smaller projects because we have less money? What's the thinking with the board now that they have the pot shrunk?
Yeah. So we are very thematic and targeted. So what, like there are other areas where we can also get value out of our dollar. So one is we're obviously not going to make huge investments like we were before. Like it's just a scale thing. Probably the number of TMS investments that we're making will be the same. But also we have put a significant amount of money in the last number of years into cybersecurity, into logging. So like these are not 1-year programs when we make those commitments. So they're multi-year we're making it over time. So we've got milestones, we've got projects that need to hit certain milestones to continue to get funded. So those will continue on their way. Like I am actually like, I get just frankly more excited about, like these projects that are smaller, that are dependent on like individuals that are going to bring massive change. The other thing that we're doing and is like the nurturing and like we made a lot of strategic investments in the beginning. We want to make sure that those are well placed and cultured over time. So between, like those two things, there's no lack of work for me and that I feel and the rest of the board. Like every week I review great proposals. I'm reviewing projects that are coming in. I just think that the nature of them, and the agencies know that, they need to bring more money to the table, where we were funding probably more of the projects before it, like maybe at 5 or 10% repayment rate, we're up to 50%. So that can take, if they were contemplating a $40 million project, it could have been twice as big of an ask before from us. And now we're probably, in a position where we're going to look for that 50% repayment rate. So the projects are going to stay the same size, just more from the agencies.
I know it's not easy, so I appreciate the insights, because TMF is a hot topic. There's a lot of potential there, and again, I know there's a big balance going on. Drew, in the last minute I have with you, I'm just going to ask, what do you want to make sure folks know about this IT modernization, this holistic approach that you see as OMB partners with OPM and GSA and OFPP and so many others? What's that message to the CIOs and others in government around where this path is continuing to lead you?
Yeah, like mostly like keep delivering to the public. Like at the end of the day, when the public and our government employees see better systems, see more modern systems, they're going to want to use those services more. They're going to get higher value out of it. Our employees are going to be happier. They're going to do higher value things every day, whether, like their jobs, like are helping more people, or they're helping them, each individual, get more benefits. Like at the end of the day, like technology is an amazing lever. Cloud is probably our strongest and most necessary of those. I don't see a lot of times another way of getting there. But as we modernize, like the focus on that mission and understanding like that almost every one of our services can be like within a couple of clicks, accessible, like your identity is easily verified. You're able to do like one-stop service to feel like from the outside that we know you as a government, and that we're giving you the same customer service that you experience across any number of other programs in the commercial sector. Like that, like I get super excited about the people at the agencies, like building the systems that are gonna deliver that value.
Drew, you've been very generous with your time. Let me thank my guest. Drew Myklegard is the Deputy Federal Chief Information Officer in the Office of Management and Budget. Drew, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it. I'd love if you made time for me more often, like anytime.
From your mouth to the press people's ears, you're on it. So, Drew, again, thanks. I'm Jason Miller, and you've been watching Federal News Network. Now, let me send you back to the studio for more from the Cloud Exchange.